Right, so welcome everyone. I hope you will get the information that you're looking for today. We have received, I think, four emails with questions, one from Bandung, Indonesia, one from India, from Serb, and one from South China University, as well as there are two questions from KMUTT. And the way that I want to proceed is that I will share my screen where I've combined all the questions in a Word file. And then depending on who seems to be the most suitable, or I think the three of us, we just will answer to our best knowledge. And I would like to ask the students to note down any further questions, and then we will do any additional questions after this session, so we can control the time a little bit better. Okay, so let me just start. I think this session is being recorded, so any other student can see this presentation later on. And you should by now see my screen, which shows you a Word file. Okay, so these are the first questions. Let me just go to the first one. Is the first one to send us questions is Bandung. So we like to start with them. And the first question is, are there any building regulations regarding maximum footprint? How many percentages are of the area is for blue and green? I think Willie can answer this best. May I ask you kindly?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Actually, the proposed zoning ordinance contains this. This is mainly based on the National Building Code of the Philippines. I don't quite get the blue and the green typology, but probably it will refer to areas where there are certain restrictions. Yes, probably Architect Jen can help me on this. So what I'll do is send in the relevant provision in the zoning ordinance that contains this, so that you can take a look at the regulations as to percentage use of the property.
Okay. Hello everyone.
Hello.
Okay. Hello Martin. Hello Willie, and good. It's already 12 o'clock, so good afternoon to our participants. So with regards to, I have been looking on the questions. With regards to this question number 1, again, it's stipulated under Rule 7 and 8 of the National Building Code. I will be looking for an electronic copy of the National Building Code so that I will be able to send or to share it to our folder, so they could look it up there. So it's for different types of proposals or building, different types of occupancies. We have the formula on how to compute the building footprint.
Okay.
So, and also if they are considering, since the main focus would be housing, if they are going to consider to go with the housing project, so it's also covered by the Batas Pambansa 220 or BP 220 for socialized and economic housing, and also Presidential Decree 957, that is for open market housing and open market and condominium type of housing. So I will just be sharing it I'll be uploading it in our shared folder so that they will be able to read onto it. But this is under Rule 7 and 8. And also included there are the different types of the residential zoning, different types of residential zones. So it affects the density per type of residential zone. So that is this is the minimum standard stipulated, national standard. But I think for the city zoning, they could stipulate above or over this minimum guidelines or standards.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Actually, if I may add, the zoning ordinance is merely lifts from the National Building Code. So that is the guiding law insofar as we are concerned.
All right. Okay. And if I may also add something, obviously that is a lot of information that need to be digested from the students. Our competition will not check for the will not check whether you are following all the national codes and so on, because that's not the intention of this competition. You can actually use common sense as well as your knowledge from your own country, if you feel like this is applicable and this is sufficient. However, if you want to go into the detail, then we will provide this information on the National Building Code, and Architect Jen will add that to the Google Drive that we have already linked. So I just also write here, please add common sense, meaning like students should, it's not, we are not checking whether you are fulfilling all the requirements in this regard. It's much more important that your idea seems to be a good idea. So then I just add this.
One last point.
Yeah.
One last point, Martin. A rule of thumb of the city insofar as building subdivision projects.
Yeah.
So meaning to say this is no longer the house, but the entire subdivision or a community.
Yes.
30% should be allocated for open spaces, roads, etc. So only 70% maximum are supposed to go to individual structures.
Okay.
So probably that will answer the blue and green phrase that is mentioned in the question.
Okay, that sounds very good. Thank you.
Martin, I also would like to add up. We, as you have mentioned, that we would not want them to be restricted. We wanted the ideas to be free flow. We do not want them to be restricted by these codes.
Okay.
So it could be a reference, but of course, if it doesn't necessarily mean that it would be restricting to them. It would be limiting to their ideas.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question. Is there a detailed spatial plan of the city? I have already added one comment that my students already kind of like asked or tried to find information. What I have found is that the information showcased in OpenStreetMap, which is a website, is actually very detailed. So you can refer to this one. There is also the chance to download actually sections of this map. And as for the provided maps, they are maybe not so detailed from the city, but of course they have maybe more information. But again, like I don't think there is more information that will need to be provided from our side, unless Willie says he or Jennifer says you have additional information.
By the way, open spaces will already include the road network.
That will already include the road network, yes.
Yes, the road network.
Okay. Number 3, is it possible to build other facilities in the residential areas? How many percentage are possible? Are there any strict regulations on the zonings? Again, I would first maybe give the chance to Willie and Jen to answer this question, but I already said yes, because normally...
Yes. You are okay. You are right, Martin. Actually, it's stipulated in our, usually these are open spaces and community facilities such as playgrounds. So it's also stipulated in the details are in our BP 220 and PD 957 on the percentage on how, because this is from the 30%. If I remembered it right, I think community facilities are 6% of that of the area.
Yes, that's correct.
6%.
And yeah, I think more or less, but they have to check it in our because we have different provisions. If it's under if the development is socialized housing, we have a different there's a different standard, or under open market. So it's the minimum. I think it's the minimum. So again, I will be sharing the codes, so they could have a look into it. But I think that's the rule of that's the minimum. But they can add more if they want.
Yeah.
So
thank you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Next question is, does the city or the region have natural resources for the main building materials in the Philippines? Maybe there are certainly plenty of natural resources. They are not specifically being used for building materials. These natural resources are, for example, bamboo. I think it is in the duty of the students to find these. So I would like to suggest bamboo as one example, but
Yes.
Again, you might find some research on other materials. Also, the BISCAST has done a project where common construction materials, which is basically the hollow core cement block, has been used and has been improved, which is a very common construction material. Maybe any other comments that you would like to add?
Okay. So basically, the common materials that we are using here, that's why the reason why we opted to use the materials for our CCRPH technology, the one that I have presented during our webinar, because it's the one commonly available material. So usually what we are using here are wood, metal, concrete, cement, and steel. So that's it. But again, we would like, if you have materials that materials are abundant in bamboo, as what you have mentioned, Martin. We also have this local an organization which has utilized bamboo as a reinforcement, as an alternative reinforcement material for housing. We have the one developed by Base Bahay. So usually the source of bamboo is in Bula, what I know of. So we are utilizing the Kawayang Tinik bamboos, but there are also other species available.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Is there a specific local material from the local factory for shelter resilience constructions? Are there any factories that provide construction materials? If yes, what are the products? I think this refers to what local materials are available. Again, I think, I don't know, to be honest. I think most common construction materials are also locally available. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. Sand, gravel, cement, those are locally available. And those are usually the ones that are used in construction activities in the city.
So usually
wood
for sand, yeah. Okay, sir, really go ahead.
Yes, wood is also available, but lately it has become pricey because supply constraints.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Why? Oh, I think this sentence needs to be rewritten. Why is Naga City important to the Philippines?
Several reasons. One is that the Philippines has a National Spatial Strategy Plan, NSS, and they have divided the country into 17 administrative regions. And at least in a region, which is Bicol, it has been identified as one of the 2 regional centers. So it's a region of 5 million, and this region two city centers, Naga and Legazpi, have been identified. So it mainly serves the Camarines provinces, the two of the bigger provinces in the Bicol region. So that is one importance of Naga City to the Philippines. The other importance is that as a city, we also develop human capital that the nation benefits from. And culturally, we host the biggest Marian celebration. I think one of the question asks about the Peña Francia celebration. It is I think the biggest celebration that honors the Lady of Mary, who is the Mother of Jesus in the Catholic Church. So that's one additional reason why it is important. Of course, that is not to say that the other cities are not important, but insofar as Bicol region is concerned, we play an outsized role because we are one of the two regional centers.
Okay. Any urgencies to select these 4 sites?
By the way,
yeah, sorry.
Let me also add, historically, we are the fourth oldest city in the Philippines. When the Spaniards came, they found that the communities in the Philippines, the indigenous communities of the Philippines, do not have urban centers. They only have, if I'm not mistaken, Manila as the major urban center at the time. So when they went on establishing Spanish cities, Naga was the fourth to be established, after Manila, Cebu, and Nueva Segovia and Northern Luzon.
All right, thank you. And another question: any urgencies to select these 4 sites in the area? I have already added that I think this question will come back more and more. Will come back again and will be asked. I added that the reason for these sites is because these are currently considered sites by the city government, because these sites are available and affordable at the time. I'm not exactly sure whether they have been purchased already.
This is actually the response to the question. These are available and within the purchasing power of the city. So you're correct, Martin.
All right, thank you.
We would have wanted to buy better located lands, but oftentimes they are expensive, and the private sector usually moves faster, and before we know it, they have already acquired it. So these are available, yes.
So I just add the private sector has purchasing power.
Yeah, has purchasing power and moves faster than government. Government has to go through bureaucratic processes to get approval and then negotiate with landowner, determine the fair market price, and so on and so forth. Private sector does not go through that process.
Yeah, we will come back to those 4 sites because in our competition, we don't request that these 4 sites are being used. I will explain this later on. Does the government of Naga City have specific master plan for these sites? At the time, actually, it didn't. At the time, we were preparing these documents.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Up to now, there is still no master plan. It's still on the drawing board, and the process will start if the city already acquires the property.
All right, thank you. And the next question: how do the sewage and the blue water systems in Naga City, including the distribution of the blue water systems, work? I think I have provided 2 links for information on fresh water, and again, like the fresh water supply is mainly from the Mount Isarog. Is that correct? From the watersheds over there.
Mount Isarog. Mount Isarog, only around 30% right now. Previously, it was 70%. 70% now is dependent on extracted water from the ground. 3 decades ago, Mount Isarog used to supply the majority or the bulk, 70%. Now it's reverse. Mount Isarog can no longer supply the majority.
So groundwater
by the way,
extraction?
yes, groundwater extraction is around 70% right now.
Thank you.
And right now, the water district is developing a surface water treatment facility to add up to the their portfolio because of the growing demand. This will mainly serve a neighboring town and the western part of the city. By the way, the water district serves Naga and 4 neighboring towns. So it's not an exclusive fit within the territorial jurisdiction of Naga. This is the reason why they're now into surface water treatment, because more and more the source of groundwater in Naga is being depleted.
Okay. And for the sewage water or for the wastewater, actually, I added the information that all houses or buildings have sewage tanks, and actually the effluent, it's then leading to the rivers. Is it correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
We don't have a proper sewage system yet.
All right, thank you. On the TOR, we should provide 18,000 housing. Is it housing units? Is it for one site or for all the sites? About the goal, sorry, I have to turn off a window. About the goal of the design, which one is the right one? 2050 or 2032? So I think this is on my side. I should explain that. First of all, there is this is confusing. I have to apologize. In the competition brief, both dates are being named. So for clarification, I have written down the following. The 18,000 refers to a calculation made to assess the future demand. This is from some data that we have found. So this means like the city estimates a demand of up to 18,000 units, but our competition actually does not need to fulfill this requirement. What is much more important is that we offer solutions of how to deal with this large number. So no one will ask you to actually prove that you have designed 18,000 units, but what we are looking for is like an approach and solution of how to deal with this large number. As for the time, I think this can be also used. This is not so necessarily important, but I think the number 2050 is probably more realistic. The number of 2032 comes actually from this calculation or from this estimate that has been done. So this estimate said you need 18,000 units for 2032 or up to 2032. But again, like if you want to refer to your solution, then you might better actually think of 2050. Any comments on your side?
Okay. By the way, Martin, I have also, in addition to that, they may also have noted that based on the presentation of Engineer Rolly during the webinar, that the city government of Naga has been giving all their efforts to be able to fulfill the housing backlog, but they have been purchasing relocation sites for housing. But then again, in spite of that, the backlog has still continuously been increasing. So maybe they would be able to offer us like a solution to this. The focus should be on this and not really on the figure.
Okay, all right. So what you're saying is the government is dealing with it. They are trying to actually cover this demand, but actually the demand is increasing, and a solution should be more focusing on the increasing demand. Yeah, all right, thank you. Our proposal should be possible to apply one of the 4 sites. Is this regarding the size or the scope of the sites? So now actually, again, this is important. These sites have been reserved for purchase or have been purchased by the government. It is not mandatory that you actually refer to these sites. And I give you an example. If you are the opinion that the city should focus more on densification within the city area, then you might actually focus on this part and not on these sites that have been provided. Again, this is a idea competition where you actually supposed to come up with proposals of how to deal with these issues under your consideration, like the way that you think it is done the best. Yeah. Okay, so the answer is you don't need to use the 4 sites. You don't need to use one of the 4 sites or any of the 4 sites. You also don't need to bring a solution with 18,000 units for these 4 sites. If you feel like these sites are important, then you can use them. If you feel like other solutions are better, then please provide other solutions. This is also in the interest of the founder of the DRIA competition, of Oscar, who mentioned that actually the universities have to have the freedom to decide what solutions might be the most appropriate. Okay, so this concludes the questions of Bandung. Next set of questions comes from Sept in India. And here we start with water again. Are there any traditional water harvesting systems known during the Spanish rule? Or any time, like rooftop harvesting, higher plinths or underground wells. And I have added already that, of course, not all buildings or all houses are connected to freshwater supply, even though most are. But there are off-grid solutions, which usually are roof catchment areas, and then there are like clay or metal containers for water storage. The question for Willy or for Jennifer is also like from the Spanish reign or from Spanish time, are there any different, or did the Spanish already establish a drainage system?
If I may, there was a drainage system. In fact, one of the streets of Naga City is named after a Spanish engineer, Santonja, who devised an underground system of capturing runoff water, especially during typhoon or flooding. Unfortunately, this drainage system has been progressively erased because some of the esteros in the downtown area of Naga City had been filled up. So the canals have already been filled up, and they do not exist anymore. What the local government right now is trying to do is to bring back the idea of rainwater harvesting by ordinance. So there is now a pending ordinance, which is consistent, of course, with a national mandate to promote water harvesting. The reason why there is now that idea is that we are in times of climate change, we're now experiencing water shortage. Probably during the Spanish times, that was not a concern because greenhouse gas emission was not so problematic at the time. But now we're dealing with this, so there is now a policy. So the short answer is that during the Spanish times, they have. But as Naga progressed and tried to approach modernity, it was neglected. But right now, we're waking up to the reality that we have to do it all over again. So there is now a policy being developed to respond to that.
All right. Jennifer?
Martin, in addition to that, usually for the individual houses, for the residential, they have what we call aljibe. Aljibe, it's a cistern which collects rainwater. So that's being used in for individual residential units.
Is that correct?
And now but of course, since that we do not have this the old houses anymore, the bahay na bato that we have now this modern houses. We do not have that anymore. But of course, right here in Viscas, we have this rainwater harvesting system that we are using, but not all of the residential units would adopts it. So I think there's a need to like to promote, because it's really not mandatory. Unlike in Davao City, it's mandatory for them to have a rainwater harvesting system. And I think there's still a certain development or a certain project where rainwater harvesting system is required for a particular building. But I think for residential, it's not required. I was telling in Davao City, it was because I had a project there, a residential housing or a residential project there, and it's being required since they are really suffering from water shortages in a particular area.
All right, thank you. Just to make sure I spell it correctly, is this the name of the road or the engineer, Santona?
Yeah, Santonha. There should be a J after N. Santonha.
Santonha.
Yes, yes.
And Aljibe water collection system, is that correct spelled?
It's letter J, Martin. Aljibe. Letter J. ALJ. Aljibe. Yeah, that's during the Spanish time for the, but now it doesn't exist now.
All right.
So that's during the Spanish.
Existed during Spanish time.
Yeah.
All right, very interesting. Is there any water management system on which Naga city development was based upon? If yes, did it even work during the floods, cyclones, and when was this that these problems started intensifying?
Water management, institutionally, water management is mostly seen as the responsibility of the water district. Of course, the drainage system is the responsibility of the city. So water supply provision is a responsibility of the water district, but the construction of a drainage system is the responsibility of the city government. We are coming up with a drainage master plan to respond to this, especially the climate change challenges that are facing most other localities, especially in the Philippines right now. But in the past, it's almost always a catch-up proposition, meaning to say, driven by the experience, that's the time when government tries to put up a drainage system in response. So that is what we are trying to resolve right now, a gap insofar as drainage master planning is concerned. So the quick question to the answer is that in the past, there is no such comprehensive plan for a drainage system. But now we are mandated or required by the Sanggunian, which is our city council, to come up with one. The other consideration there is one thing helping us, of course, is there is a study conducted by CDIA. This is facility housed at the Asian Development Bank as part of the Naga River Revitalization Project. So there is a drainage component to that. And we're using that as a reference in coming up with this drainage master plan for the local drainage system. I can send a copy of the study so that the students can take a look at it. I look for a copy.
Thank you.
And share it in the chat group, in the chat.
A copy will be provided. All right, thank you. Who is responsible for water management currently? I think this was also answered within this question. It's done by the city and the individual districts, as well as I have been providing some additional information by using links from the city where some parts are explained. There is one article or one article about water storage treatment or septage treatment, and just generally the water quality profile. How do people cope with storms, winds currently? Is there any permanent solution in the works? What are the current disaster management rehabilitation approaches by the Naga government? I just added one very simple sentence. Actually, there is more to it. I think Naga has a disaster management plan in place. I think it is actually already provided for in the research material. What I have added here, if you take a look at the buildings, usually most buildings do not have overhangs, or what they try to do is to reduce the lift forces when you have strong winds and storms. So actually, most buildings try to avoid that wind could catch up areas and rip the roof apart. But I think there is more to it, so I would like to give this question to Jennifer and to Willy.
Let me start by saying that, and this is related to one other question I saw, why is there a preponderance of makeshift housing in the city? The key reason, of course, there is poverty. And mainly because the social housing program discussed by Engineer Rolly was mostly focused on, especially for the resettlement approaches, was mostly focused on self-help approaches, meaning to say government provides the lot, the household will be responsible for putting up the shelter or the housing unit. The upside for that is it's kind of cheaper, more affordable for the city. It does not require a lot of resources, of course. But if you take a look at it citywide, it can be resource intensive. But of course, that takes away the responsibility of putting up the housing out of our hands. The downside there is that most often the beneficiary of this approach, because they're poor, do not have the capability to put up a really resilient type of housing. So right now, what the city is doing is that progressively, we're trying to upgrade the quality of the housing, especially in these areas that belong to the portfolio of the Housing and Settlements Development Office. And at the same time, other institutions are also being forced to do the same. For instance, the Kasureco 2, the utility provider of power, is already improving the quality of their electric lines in the city, mainly because of the recent experience where a typhoon comes, the network of electric posts goes down, then we rehabilitate this. The following year, that happens again and again. So there is a vicious cycle of us being at the mercy of strong typhoons. So the short answer is that progressively, depending on our resources, we're trying to upgrade the quality of both housing as well as the infrastructure that are available in the city.
All right, thank you. Okay. Then I think yeah.
Okay, Martin. So I think I also I agree with Willy that it's mostly poverty. And also like if if the government, the city government would only provide for lots, and the beneficiaries are left alone to build their houses, unless, but we also have this non-government organizations like the Gawad Kalinga, who would assist them. They have this program. They would assist them in partnership also with the city, would provide, or a private entity would provide for the lot. They would be the one to assist them in building or developing an entire area, the residential area. So this is the one that I have presented, and that we went to the community of Gawad Kalinga, wherein housing units are being provided. But as you can see, all these housing units have a very limited budget. So for one housing unit, it's limited to like 150,000 pesos. So just a very small amount, and that's already made of concrete. But as you can see, once turned over to them, they have no ceiling, and the area is very small because they cannot afford it. It's really very limited in terms of area. And when we went there, also G was asking me on the old rubber or old tires which we found in the rooftops, if you still remember it. So they have been utilizing it as an alternative to like reinforce their roof in during the times of typhoon. So to protect their roof from uplift. So they are usually utilizing that as like what do you call that? Something that they would prevent the roof for
Flying off. Yeah,
during during typhoon. Yeah. So most is the lack of budget also for the houses.
Okay. All right. Lots of information. Thank you. Are there maps for cyclones, and how dangerous are cyclones compared to typhoons? First, I would like to make clear in this competition, I think in the Philippines in general, people speak of typhoons rather than cyclones.
Yeah.
I'm not
that's
sure.
correct.
I think it has something to do with whether it's in the south or in the north of the Pacific Ocean, the origin, and I think it's mostly the south. So we typically speak of typhoons, and the maps there is one map of cyclones that can be found in the research material. I think that was done by the Rockefeller Foundation in relationship to Naga City. You might find some other resources too on the web. This would be the duty of the students to find more resources. This information on typhoons can be found. What are the associations people have with water villages, festivals, livelihood, fishery, tourism, etc.?
Let me start by taking off from the Peña Francia celebration. The Peña Francia celebration is several hundred years old already. So it has two parts. The first part is a procession of the image from the basilica by foot. It happens during the Trasalción. That's the opening of the 10-day celebration. The return, on the other hand, is via the river. So this underscores the fact that that is also a very water-based religious celebration of the church. A local historian, Dr. Danny Girona, said that the reason why that was so is that it was designed by the Spaniards as a means of demonstrating that the Christian God is more powerful than the gods of the indigenous Filipinos at the time. You see, there were river gods in this community in the past, and there was even a god that is represented by the crocodile. And at that time, Naga River has lots of crocodiles. So to do a procession over Naga River, in spite of the presence of the crocodile, demonstrates that the Spaniard or the Christian God, of course, is more powerful. So it has a dimension of showing superiority over the local religious belief. So that is the association of the water insofar as the religious component of our culture is concerned.
All right, thank you. So I was trying to boil it down to the celebration is also taking place on the rivers. Rivers used to be the main ways through the city or waterways, and the Spanish rule aimed to demonstrate superiority. All right, thank you. Can we know more about the Peña Francia Festival? I think this has just been answered. Happening in the city. I think we can actually add a little bit more. It's a very big event, and maybe Billy or Jennifer can explain what happens during the event, how many people are coming. And you already mentioned that actually a lot of it takes place on the water.
Yes, probably Architect Jen can supplement.
Okay. So it actually starts with I think starts with the octave of the birthday of Mama Mary is when we hold the traslasyon. So it's a land procession. Then when the image is being brought from her shrine, the Peña Francia, and going to from the basilica, then going to the Peña Francia, the old shrine. Then to the cathedral, the Naga City Cathedral. Then I think it's after a week we have this fluvial procession wherein from the Naga City Cathedral is taken by foot going to the Centro CBD1 to the Naga River, and it's traveled. We call that the fluvial procession, and it travels back going to her shrine, the Basilica Minore in Balatas. And within that we have a lot of I don't have the exact figure, but we have pilgrims, since Naga City is the pilgrim city. For that, we have the pilgrims coming from different provinces, different cities within the Philippines. So usually the visitors come during the traslasyon and during the fluvial procession. More during the fluvial procession. So it's usually a one week event.
All right, and it's the largest.
I will also add that because of the huge volume of people coming to the city, it's now commonplace. This was before COVID-19. It's now commonplace that pilgrims will come not during the 10-day celebration anymore, but within the entire month of September. So you can see buses of pilgrims coming at the start of September, or even during the latter part of September. And this even takes place during the summer, because the church has decided to also come up with a summer reenactment of the Peña Francia celebration. They call it this Summer sa Peña Francia. So this celebration has already become an important fixture of the local society, especially with the religious sector. And Architect Jen is right. The devotion to the Virgin has attracted adherents not only in our region of 6 provinces, but all over the Philippines. And oftentimes we receive visitors outside of the Philippines, especially from Catholics.
All right, thank you.
And also, Martin, to add to that, there was a proposal before coming from a group of Marian devotees to beautify the riverfront leading to the one leading to the basilica.
Thank you. Yes, that has been endorsed already to the national government. It cleared the city government decision makers. It was endorsed positively. So if the national government allocates fund, then that will happen. That beautification project.
All right, thank you. What is the culture and everyday lifestyle of the people in Naga City like? That's difficult to answer.
Yes, it's very much like a typical city, mainly because Naga performs the urban basic services in this part of Camarines Sur. So you will see people in the morning together with the children going to work and going to school. Then we have, of course, the transportation system moving these people from where they're coming from to where they want to go. So it's a typical urban setting that you see in most other countries, especially in Asia. There's not much difference between what takes place in Naga with a typical Asian city.
All right, thank you. Why is a huge amount of makeshift housing seen in Naga? I think we have been answering this. I just added here. These are either created by informal settlers or are the houses of the urban poor. And you answered that more directly because of poverty. So I think
I'll also add here, Martin, that because Naga is of course a city, there is also that migration forces coming into play. We are receiving people from neighboring towns, some even neighboring provinces, who are looking, of course, for better opportunities. So they move into the city, and because most often they do not have readily available housing, they take advantage of whatever available space are there. So that is also a force that is shaping the housing and other social issues facing Naga. Just to provide one of these forces that are actually in play. Of course, this does not discount the fact that there are also Naga City residents who are looking for better opportunities and leave the city because they have been educated, they have the credentials, they have the experience. They go to either Metro Manila or Southern Tagalog or even outside of the city. So there is both internal migration into Naga and then external migration outside of Naga to Manila or to outside of the Philippines.
All right, thank you. Is export and agriculture the only main business sector in Naga? Is there a thought to bring any other kind of industry, such as an IT hub in the city in the future for the development?
I will not say that we're strong on export. Actually, if you look at the structure of our economy, the numbers show that we're majority a service-based economy, trading and commerce on the one hand, and then the basic services like banking, education, etc. on the other. Agriculture is, I think, right now is a single-digit industry. The other big industry, of course, is government services. But lately, we have been bringing in IT, especially on the business process outsourcing. There is now the presence of IBM, Quantrix, Concentrix, and one other BPO that is operating in Naga City. And one of the information I got from our investment board is that in spite of the pandemic, it is the sector that actually is doing well during the past year. We have just marked the 12 months of lockdown, of quarantine in Naga, just last March 16. Most of the businesses suffered, but the information coming from our investment board is that the BPO companies and the other related activities that are connected to them have actually fared well, mainly because they're able to work from home. They don't have to report to their office and continue with their job, even if based from home. Of course, the constraint there is most often, especially in cases where internet services go down, then that affects them. I can speak to that from a personal experience. One of my daughter actually is an English teacher, doing English as second language, providing English as second language services to students in China and Japan. The only constraint she faces is when power goes down. That's why we established a battery system that takes over when there is a power outage. But internet, on the other hand, is a real concern. So we now have cabled fiber internet and a backup of internet that is wireless.
Okay, all right. Are the given sites possible location for growth and development by the government of Naga? We would like to further know, why are those sites considered important in detail? Economic growth, industrial, and upcoming highways.
Let me try.
I think there are two questions. Yeah.
Yes, they are important not only because they are affordable and available to the city. The other consideration is that the city also has, especially has designated that area as a secondary growth area of the city of Naga City. So that is also the area where hopefully the first economic zone of the city will rise. The only constraint or the only stumbling block we're facing is that the national government has yet to issue the presidential declaration saying that that indeed is a registered economic zone of the Philippine government. So that's the only remaining concern. There is now a potential Japanese firm that is ready to locate. So that will support the idea that Pacol, where those lands are located, is emerging as a secondary growth area of the city. So that means that market forces supplemented by government policy actually is positioning that area as an area for growth and development.
All right.
And in addition, because that has been identified as such, even government spending is now being positioned to support that. For example, national government already has been expanding and improving the quality of the access roads to that area, mainly because of the designation of a nearby property to those land holdings as an economic zone. Of course, if you have an economic zone, you have to ensure that there is access by trucks to the facility, to delivery trucks to the facility, and so on and so forth. The water district, the Casureco 2 is establishing also a new substation in that area to serve these growing needs, and so is the water district. So these policies and directions and investment decisions by both government and private sector is actually taking place because that was identified as a secondary growth area. And this is the entire logic of developing housing in that area, because we expect that if companies do indeed locate in that economic zone, then workers will have to have housing, and the city will be better prepared if it starts early.
Is the government focusing on converting the city to a heavily touristic spot? I think there is the attempt to find out how
so
important.
Much.
Yeah.
Ours is more of a religious and cultural spot, not really a city that is devoted to tourism. Tourism is a key driver of our growth, but we are not positioning ourselves as a tourist destination. We like to think of Naga as a staging area for tourism. So we provide the basic facilities that tourists need: hotels, lifestyle, nightlife, and such other services that visitors, domestic and international, would require. But to go, for instance, into building facilities that are more tourism oriented, probably no. There are other areas in Camarines Sur that are oriented towards that. For example, the neighboring town, which is host to the airport, is also where the provincial government center is located, and they have built a wakeboarding facility. The Camarines Sur water sports complex is located there. So it's not rational for us to compete with the province.
Okay. May we know more about the lifestyles and home relations of people living in Naga? Types of house, singular bungalows, township, individual ownership, shared typologies, etc. I think this focuses more on like what is family life about, and then how people live in general, what different lifestyles and family lifestyles exist.
Let me start by referring you to the document we shared. I think there is on the housing profile of the land use plan, there is a table there as to the type of housing structures that are present in Naga City. Those were taken from the 2010 census of population and housing. So my sense is that the Filipino psyche is still still prefers single detached housing if the area if they have access to land and that is possible and their finances would allow it. That is the preference. But more and more, because housing, of course, is not is for many or most na families in Naga is not that cheap. The solutions being offered by the market would often consist of row housing, which is now a predominant mode in some of the medium and low cost housing options being offered by our local developers. Of course, for the high end segment of the market, single bungalows or even bigger houses would be the primary offering. So it depends on which segment of of society you find yourselves in. If you belong to the poor, then you will have to content yourself with what the housing department of the city government is offering under Kaantabay sa Kausugan. So you will be kind of limited as to the housing options available. So you will probably start with a home lot and do your housing using the assisted self-help approach. But as you progress economically, then the options become better. And these are offered by the private sector, of course. And so depending on your economic status, the kind of housing you will be able to afford will, of course, change. The really rich citizens of Naga, in fact, have several housing units. Some of these are being rented out because they're using only one. But this is the creme de la creme. This is, I think, the 1% of our population. But the average would be the middle class would, of course, take advantage of the offering of the middle of the road type of housing in Naga.
All right, thank you.
Martin.
Yeah.
Martin, also in addition to that, it has also been the culture of the Filipinos. I think it's part of our culture that it's very important for us to own a property, a lot, even how small it is. So that's why really the multiple dwelling type or the that type is would really not be I think the acceptability right now, I think, would really be very low. But maybe in the future they would learn to accept that. But I think it's because of that, the culture that we have to own a lot. So I think that's it.
In fact, that is borne out by a survey conducted by NEDA when they're trying to craft the long-term vision of the Philippines, which eventually became Ambisyon Natin 2040. There are essentially two findings. The average Filipino family wants to own a lot in a house and own a car. So those are the two major findings of that national survey. So Architect Jen is correct in that sense. Of course, notwithstanding that, the main driver would still be the circumstance of the family. Even if the vision is that ideal, but the reality kicks in. So you will have to deal with, of course, with reality.
Okay, thank you. Can we receive drawings for existing housing units at unit or cluster scale to understand family lifestyle and adaptation? Is there such a possibility? Or I think advice.
What I can do is I'll have my staff scan a recent subdivision application in Naga. Usually, a subdivision application would consist of the layout of the proposed subdivision, and that should be able to answer this question, to give you an idea what are the offerings being, what kind of housing units are being made available by the market.
Okay.
Would it be okay if we send it by early next week?
Sure, absolutely fine. I think.
Sure.
And I'm also just typing. Teams can research online by checking private sector development.
Yes.
private sector offers. Usually you can find some examples on the housings that are being built.
And
What?
also, Martin,
Yes.
I think I have also shared the housing, the plans for Gawad Kalinga. That's for socialized housing.
They are also already shared.
Yeah, yeah. The one that I have presented. Anyway, I can still look for the picture of the site plan and also for the floor plans and reshare them again.
Right. Thank you. What are the systems in place for the agricultural advancement in the city, if any?
Later.
Yes, let me try to answer that. Let me take up from what I shared, that although half of the city's land area is still agricultural, that sector only contributes single digit. If I'm not mistaken, around 8 or 9% of the total output in the city. So that means to say that agriculture is underperforming. This is one of the main reasons is that more and more there is demand for housing, and landowners would often speculate and would rather park their land holdings, keep it unproductive, so that if the opportunity comes, they will convert this to non-agricultural use and then benefit from housing. So there is not much incentive to go into agriculture in so far as the city is concerned. Of course, the other side of the equation is that a city like Naga will require food, which only the agricultural sector can provide. So right now, the local and the national government is still promoting agriculture, mainly because it's driven by the requirements of our country. Recently, the regional development plan of Bicol is not only promoting the usual agricultural crops like palay, corn, etc., but also high-value crops. Because right now, there is a shift in the thinking of the central government that the agricultural sector should focus both on the income of the farmers as well as the volume of the produce being generated by our farmlands. This is a major shift. Previously, the only metric for agriculture in the Philippines is how much, for instance, palay, this is rice, raw rice, is being produced per hectare, without regard as to whether the farming sector actually is making money or even surviving. So this for me is a big development. So right now there is no longer that much emphasis on the main staples like rice, but also high value crops. That is important because this region is producing a unique nut called pili. This is endemic to the region and not found in other areas of the country. So if you talk about pili, that's always associated with Bicol. And most pili processing is actually taking place in Naga and in Camarines. So that is one impact of not only climate change, but the realities of our modern life. The move towards greater specialization. The challenge for agriculture, of course, is that we lie in the typhoon belt. Every year, around 5 typhoons would visit Naga. One of them would, in fact, cross directly, hit us directly. So agriculture, of course, is susceptible to this risk that your harvest can be threatened by the coming or the eventuality of a typhoon. So the rational response would have been to promote crop insurance, so that at the very least the farming sector is covered. They're able to recover their investment. But not everyone goes into that. So there is an economic segment to this story, where the middlemen, the ones buying and then selling this to and bringing this to other areas, are actually the ones benefiting from this arrangement. The real farmers on the ground, the ones planting the crops, are actually on a hand-to-mouth existence. So they're not really benefiting from this. So that means that agriculture is still a challenge, not only for Naga, but for the Philippines.
This is also one of the causes for the large amount of migration. Is that correct? Within the country.
Yes,
yeah.
That's that. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me end you with an anecdote. The only indicator that agriculture becomes promising is if average families become rich out of it. So there are many Filipino families who gamble, going abroad and then working there. A good number of them actually help their families have better lives in the Philippines. They are the ones who have better housing, especially in the rural areas. If we reach that point that agriculture can actually convince the young Filipinos that there is a possibility of improving yourselves economically and going into agriculture, then that's the time that we have been able to solve this problem quite substantially.
All right, thank you. Next set of questions is from South China University. Are we going to design one of the 4 sites, A, B, C, D, or all of them? So I think we answered that already. Teams are to decide whether to use the sites or not. Are the 18,000 housing units required to be resettled in the mission statement, placed in 4 sites or one of them? No, teams are to decide whether to provide 80,000 housing units or not, and whether they do that in these sites or not. Are there any restrictions on building height and numbers of floors? I think that very much depends on the land use code and the areas where to build. But I think we can we make a rule of thumb for the students in agricultural or in single main residential areas? It might be 2 floors or maximum 3 floors. Any suggestions?
Probably that would be okay. But just to reiterate what I did is that in the chat box, I already uploaded a soft copy of the zoning ordinance, and there are references to the National Building Code guidance that Architect Jen pointed out. So you might want to take a look at them. In fact, Martin is right. It depends on the kind of the area where you are located. If this is residential zone 3, then you can go as high as, if I'm not mistaken, more than 10 floors. But if this is R1, yeah, roughly 2 floors or up to 3 floors.
City areas up to 10 floors. Is there a requirement for the specific area of each house? I was writing government funding for low-income housing, or for socialized housing is limited to 24 square meters per unit. So this is what I remember from one of my visits to Naga City, that a lot of social housing is limited to 24 square meters per beneficiary because of the funding provided from the government. Is this still correct? Hello, did I?
Yes, I'll say that still is if that number came from Engineer Rolly Campillos of HSDO, then that should be the guiding consideration.
It's actually, Martin, the minimum.
That's the minimum.
Since it's actually restricted by budget, the budget provided. But that's the minimum that they can. I mean, the smallest area that they can provide.
And is there a maximum too?
I think there is. It's in the codes that I will be providing, because I think there is also a maximum area, since if it's beyond that area, that would already qualify for another type. Like for example, that is for the socialized housing. For another type, like bigger than that, would be for the economic and also for the open market.
So essentially, it's only a floor.
So the 24 square meters mostly refer to basically fully funded social housings for informal settlers and people and the poor. All right. So, but if there are people who can co-fund or people that
Yes.
can kind of like take up a loan, then the sizes of these social housing units can increase.
Yes.
All right, thank you. The mission statement requires us to plan for 2050. Why is the housing stock related to 2032? I answered that already. It's because of the source of information. What is the significance of 2050 and 2032? The correct answer here is, if you want to think about a long-term strategy, then please use 2050. And the calculation for the housing was made for 2032. That's the confusion. All right. And then I have, I think, 2 more questions from KMUTT that were posted earlier. Are there any further information on the current and future railroad system in and around Naga City? I think that relates to public transportation opportunities within Naga that exist or may not exist.
Yes, I'll try to answer this. Recently, in fact, this morning, there is now a consultation being done by the railway firm of the government, Philippine National Railways. They are in fact realigning the rail tracks for the rehabilitation. Actually, I'll be posting the PowerPoint presentation they shared, which shows you where the new proposed line of the rail tracks going to be. So this presents both an opportunity for us to replan the existing ones. So meaning to say, they are going to abandon the existing ones in favor for a new one. So this presents a planning opportunity to think about what we can do with the existing railways, because they are not going to be used by the state railway firm. So we're also preparing for this, because there are also opportunities for partnership between Naga and the rail company, so that we can do mixed use redevelopment of their significant land holding, especially in Lerma and the Lerma area, just beside the river. So I'll be uploading a presentation material in the chat group.
Thank you.
In the chat.
And the last question, are there any further information on the river's seasonal flow, as well as cross sections at strategic locations in and around Naga? I think that deals with the...
Yes, I already uploaded the Naga River, the section of the study concerning flood management in Naga, and that provides also already some of the answers to this. It discusses where the sources of flooding are, and it discusses also the hydrology of Naga River, which also answers this question.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's amazing. We went through all the questions. So what we are going to do is I will try to go through this question and answer section one more time, and then send it out to all the university teams. I'm not sure we have much time left for additional questions. I might allow 2 or maximum 3. And then I would like to conclude, because I actually also am a little bit in a time predicament here. So is there any additional questions from the students or comments? All right, then don't be shy. Okay, then if there are no questions or comments, it seems like we answered the questions quite well. And again, like, I will be posting them and I will be distributing them to all university teams. I would like to thank Jennifer and Willy for their time in helping answering these questions and providing additional information. And I really hope that a lot of the confusion that comes from the competition brief has been cleared up. And I like to repeat that one more time. This is an idea competition. You can act freely in making your own proposals, and you don't have to strictly go with the government land that is provided. This is much more for you as an information to you. And again, like the same thing goes here for goes here for the amount of housing units. Now, someone was raising the hand. I'm not sure I will be able to pronounce his name correctly. Likina.
Likine.
Yeah. Please, what is your question?
Yeah, I just have a small query. So you were telling about the water districts doing the water managements in the city and the neighboring city, and the drainage system is managed by the city, basically. So this water management thing doing by the water district, I was not, we are not clear about this. Like, what is this water district we are talking about? Is it the Bicol water district we are talking about, or what?
Yes. Actually, the water district is government-owned and government-owned corporation. It is the water utility in a manner of speaking. So it is the company or the firm that is owned by the government that is responsible for identifying where to source the water supply requirement of Naga and its neighboring towns, and how to bring this to these consumers. So that is the main role of the water district. It is, by the way, independent. It's not controlled by the city government. It has its own charter and its own set of officers and its own procedures and way of running their things.
So all the rainwater harvesting systems or the dams or anything related to water management is done by them and not the city government.
Not exactly. Rainwater harvesting does not really contribute directly to the water portfolio or the supply of the water district. So it's outside of their remit. What the water district does is to promote water conservation measures. So, I mean, to say efforts to convince the residents not to use a lot of water, but they do not go into the extent of requiring or mandating that rainwater harvesting is required of these consumers. So this points to the fact that there is an overlap as to the water management functions in our city. So you have two main players: water district for water supply, and to some extent wastewater treatment. And on the other hand, water conservation and policies that will of course be the responsibility of the city. That is why the city government is the one passing a draft ordinance. There is now a proposed ordinance in the city council that will actually require a rainwater harvesting facility of new developments in Naga City. So depending on the area that you are building, in the intensity of your activities, you will have to put up a rainwater harvesting facility. That is not the responsibility of the water district. That is our responsibility as a city government.
Thank you so much.
Okay, then I have another question that I just found here in the chat room. The overall power demand in the city for each barangay, is there some information, number one? And number two is, how is the drainage system extended throughout the urban barangays? And if there are any drainage system in the suburban, urban, rural barangay areas?
Drainage, of course, will depend as to which kind of road is going through the area. If the road is being covered by the national road, then the national government provides the drainage system because it's an accessory to the road. But most of the areas in the city are actually covered by either barangay roads and city roads. So it's the responsibility of the city government to provide drainage. In the upland areas, and because of resource constraints, we don't have a lot of budget. What you only find are the carriageway, no provision for drainage. But once budget comes in, we should be able to provide them progressively. The other opportunity is when there is money from the national government that can be allocated for the upgrading of local roads. So no longer national roads, but local roads, as what is taking place in Balatas in Cararayan, which is the road going to the Ego Zone. There is now a provision for drainage. The money comes from the central government, but it's benefiting a local road in terms of the road hierarchy. So there is an interplay of the resources taking place, and bottom line is that the city benefits. So the short question is that depending on the availability of funds, either local or national, drainage will come in if there is a road already, because it's going to be a part of the road upgrading activity.
All right, thank you. And I think this is going to be the last question that I'm going to ask. Our team saw on the hazard map data, there were lots of creeks all over the Naga city. Is there any detailed data about the creeks? And our team also sees the government's role in deepening and expanding the Sagop Creek in the Conception Pequena area. Does this apply to all the creeks in Naga?
Yeah, that's correct. There are a lot of creeks in the city, but of course, similar to the drainage component of the road, the budget constraint is the major problem. So depending on the size of the creek, if the creek is big, like Sagop Creek in Concepcion, that becomes the priority. But if the creek is only small, sometimes it happens that the creek even is filled up if there is a residential development in the area. So one thing that is important is for the local community to be mindful of the existing waterways in their locality, because there are policies that actually seeks to preserve the existing waterways. So yes, that is a continuing challenge of the city. Sometimes because it's cheaper to acquire property where there are natural rains like this, most often these are sacrificed to residential development. Is in fact one of the causes of flooding that happens because of this unplanned development. So that is a concern that we will have to face and manage, especially in the context of climate change. But the big creeks like Sagop, they become prioritized, especially if there is partnership between the central government through the DPWH and the local government. That Sagop Creek improvement actually was made possible by the presence of equipment loaned by the national government of the city.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Now all the questions pop up. I really have to go. So this is really the very last question from NCKU. How are the sanitary pits or systems that work in Naga City? I think I answered that. For normal housing, there are usually chambered systems in the ground, like 2 or 3 chambered systems, where then only the effluent either leads directly into the ground or to a nearby river system. Anyone else like to comment on that?
Just an additional note, Martin. It was only in around 1990, starting 1990, when we had a proper building unit. Previously, there was no building unit in the city, and we started implementing the building code. And from our calculation, the housing stock of the city, easily 25% of this housing stock were built before 1990. So this means to say that there is no assurance that the old housing stock had in fact the required 3-chambered sanitary pits that have concrete finish at the bottom. So meaning to say there is a possibility that although the sanitary pit exists, the wastewater will only drain into the ground and not really treated. So that is a challenge insofar as we're concerned.
Okay, and that's mostly in the city center.
Yes, in the city center.
All right. Okay. All right. One more time, thank you very much. And sorry that I am here a little bit in a time constraint, but we spent 1.5 hours answering questions. And I hope these answers have been helpful and are helping you in your design process to come up with solutions. Again, like you can inquire further and inquire more by doing online research. And I'm also like to point out that Willy, as well as Jennifer, also has the email address listed in the competition brief. So if there's really an urgent matter, you can still reach them. And from my side, I will now post the documents that Willy has been providing here, as well as my writing in terms of answering the questions a bit later on, probably late this afternoon or this evening, and send them out by email. Since I don't have all the email addresses of the students, I will send them out to the lecturers and tutors, and I hope they will actually then forward this information to you. All right, one more time. Thank you very, very much. It was fun. I enjoyed it to learn more.
Yeah.
And I look forward to see very good competition entries that will answer some of the questions of Naga City. All right. Thank you, Willy, and thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye. And
Bye-bye.
thank you to all the students for sending the questions. As well as the recording, I will send it later on.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.